Hello guys, it's Ellie again. Just a quick little video before you actually see what's going to happen in this. I'm actually appearing, well, not physically appearing, but I'm on a radio show today. It's Radio 5 Live at 1:35 p.m. UK time. Enjoy! See you after!
Get in touch. As Dan said, after 3 o'clock, we're going to be asking who's to blame? Who's to blame for this diabetes crisis in the UK? So do get in touch, please. 0500 909 693 and get your call in now. First, let's speak to Ellie Windrum, who's just 19 and has been warned she's at high risk of developing type 2 diabetes. And also Simon O'Neill, who's from the charity Diabetes UK. Hi, Ellie. Hi, Simon.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi, guys.
Hi. Let me start with you first, Simon. We heard from the doctor there, this doctor at the University of Texas, who's telling us about this 3-year-old child. It just seems extraordinary. He's talking about more and more younger people now getting diagnosed. Are we seeing this within the UK as well? Is this what you are experiencing?
Definitely. I've worked for Diabetes UK for the last 20 years, and 20 years ago we didn't really see any type 2 diabetes in children. It was, any child with diabetes had type 1, which is an autoimmune condition, nothing to do with lifestyle at all. But over the last 20 years, more and more cases have started to appear. It's still relatively rare. Only about 2% of all children with diabetes have type 2, and that's probably about 600 children in the UK. But it's rising and it's a growing problem. And as the doctor said, we used to see it in much older children, and we're now starting to see it in children of a younger age.
And adults as well, Simon, actually, because it was something perhaps someone in their 60s or maybe 50s were diagnosed with, but now you're seeing people in 20s, 30s, 40s.
That's absolutely right, and that's particularly true in people from Black and Asian minority communities. We know they are at risk at an earlier age and actually at less weight. And lots of the children who have type 2 diabetes come from Asian or Black backgrounds. So there is a particular risk there. But you're right, the age is coming down, the numbers are growing year on year for type 2 diabetes all round.
Is type 2 diabetes pretty much, not completely, but pretty much preventable?
Probably. There will be a group of people, probably about 10% of people with type 2 diabetes are normal weight. We don't quite know what is going on with them. But the majority of people with type 2 diabetes, we know it is very strongly linked to lifestyle. And in big studies where they've tried to prevent type 2 diabetes, they can prevent about 60% of it by getting people to become more active, lose weight if they're overweight, and that reduces their risk of going on to develop type 2 diabetes.
We were talking about this before the programme. My mum was sort of a classic type 2 diabetic, diagnosed in her 50s. They're told it was brought on by weight and stress, and she had insulin for a while and then managed to get it under control with diet. Let's bring Ellie in on this, because, Ellie, how did you find out that you were on the verge of developing type 2 diabetes?
Well, I fell quite sick in April, and it was sort of like I was being sick on a regular basis. And it felt like it was being directly correlated to the food I was eating. So I went to my doctor and I just said, look, can I just do some blood tests just to see if there is anything wrong? Because I said, this is not right for me to be sick all the time, because I'm generally quite a well-health person. And and the results came back and he said, you've really got to sort yourself out. He said, you are at such a high risk. It was literally on the border. And he said that you've literally just got to sort everything out. You've got to try and get yourself fitter, lose weight, and just eat better, because my lifestyle before I found out was not very good at all. So,
Was that enough of a shock for you, Ellie?
It was. It certainly it hit home. I was a bit like, worried that I was going to be even more ill than I already was, because it was unpleasant being physically sick all the time. And it just sort of woke me up and realised that I really need to do something about my life, or I'm just going to keep going in a downward spiral.
What sort of things were you doing, Ellie? Pinpoint some of those issues. Was it drink related? Was it food related and exercise? What did you need to change?
It was mainly food and exercise. The two main things that I have changed are food and exercise. I've cut down on the amount I've eaten, because I used to take in probably more than my daily intake, and I wasn't very active at all. So it was just a bit of a push to sort of get myself fitter, start eating better, just so I could feel better.
Did you think you ate really unhealthily before, Ellie? Were the sort of foods you were eating make you think, look, I really know I shouldn't be eating this every day?
Yeah, I mean, sometimes I eat things and I think, should I be eating this? But
Like what?
sort of, it would be like the sweets, the sugary drinks, stuff like that. The sort of day-to-day things that have become such a pattern in some people's day-to-day lives. So, you know, having a can of Coke or whatever, but then it sort of gets more regular and keeps going to the point where you kind of are dependent on the sugar intake.
Was there anything that surprised you at all when you found out that's actually high in sugar and you thought, I had no idea?
There was some things, like there was meals and stuff that I started to look at the labels. I was looking at them and thinking, wow, I did not realise there was all this stuff in there. Because you look at some, like, say like a ready meal, and you look at it and you think, oh, that looks nice. So you just pop it in your basket and that's it, have done with it. I don't think a lot of people actually look at the label to see what's actually in the product.
Ellie, at the age of, you're 19 at the moment, aren't you?
Yeah.
Had you ever thought about diabetes? Had it been something else that your friends or other members of your family had thought about or suffered with?
I know that my auntie had diabetes while she was pregnant, but I think it was connected to her pregnancy. But I have had my parents for many years sort of telling me, you know, you've got to watch what you eat, you've got to watch what you eat. But being the typical teenager, acting like I know it all, I sort of just brushed those statements aside, and honestly, I really regret not listening to them.
Simon, there might be people listening to Five Live this afternoon thinking, oh, I need to stop doing, you know, that normal food-related guilt issue, listening to Ellie's story there. But I suppose one encouraging thing to come out of that story in America about the 3-year-old who was diagnosed with type 2 diabetes, the doctors there were able to reverse things for her. And that's surely encouraging, isn't it?
Absolutely. I mean, that's the great thing about type 2 diabetes, if you like. If you are overweight and inactive, or you're at high risk of type 2 diabetes, becoming more active, just like Ellie's done, losing weight, trying to eat more healthily, will really greatly reduce your risk. And that's why we're working with Public Health England and NHS England on the National Diabetes Prevention Programme. We know we can prevent it if we can catch people early enough, if we can get them to do the right things and really look after themselves more. It sounds easy, as Ellie, I'm sure, will say. It's not always easy to change your lifestyle that much, but it's much easier to do it when you're young than when you're old. We get very set in our ways. So anybody who's young, overweight, knows they're not really taking care of themselves, it's worth taking steps now. It'll be much harder in the long term. And diabetes, lots of people think type 2 diabetes is a mild condition. It's not really something to worry about. It still leads to very devastating complications. It's something you can't ignore. And if you want to look after yourself, the best thing is to take steps before you get it.
One of the things we'll be looking at after 3 o'clock on this, and please feel free to get involved, 85058 at BBC 5 Live, is whether we need to blame somebody, something, society, manufacturers, lack of education, lack of action from the government. Ellie, do you take full responsibility for the situation you found yourself in?
I definitely do now. At the time, I was a bit like, oh, I don't understand what's going on, because it was quite a shock. But I definitely would say now, it was entirely my fault what I did to my body. And I would definitely encourage people who are in the similar situation that I was to definitely, get up, go for a walk, maybe cut out the sugar. I mean, even just putting sugar in your tea, just do 1 instead of 2, and so on and so forth.
It's interesting, though, isn't it, when you start to look at the breakdown of some foods and you don't think of pasta being sugar, you don't think of certain, a lot of breads being sugar. But once you put too much carbohydrate in your body converts it to sugar. So it's not as simple, is it, Simon, as saying don't eat chocolate, don't have fizzy drinks, cut down on alcohol?
Well, we know that sugary drinks are probably quite highly linked to the development of type 2 diabetes. So that is one thing that we would really recommend people to try and cut down on as much as possible. But you're right, it's a case of being aware of what you're eating. There's nothing you have to avoid 100%. But I think people, as Eddie said, you pick things up, you don't read the label, you're not aware what you're eating. And it's really to try and develop a bit more awareness around that. Nothing's out of bounds, but things in moderation. Try and eat a healthy, balanced diet. That should help with weight loss and prevention of type 2 diabetes.
Let me read this from Mark as well, who's got in contact. He says, "Hi Sam and Dan, I'm enjoying this debate about type 2 diabetes. I was diagnosed at 36. It came as a big shock to me. I wasn't fat. I think you both agree with that. I've kept the weight off for the last 12 years. But he says, be careful of the type 2s have themselves to blame. It's a political move to demonise us, says Mark. And as with almost everything you hear from a politician, it's rather more complicated than that. I think that's exactly what we want to try and get into after 3 o'clock today. Simon O'Neill, thank you very much for coming on the radio and telling us about that. And Ellie, I really appreciate you telling us your story as well. Ellie, who, if you missed it, is 19 and was told by a doctor that she was in serious risk of developing type 2 diabetes if she didn't change her diet and her lifestyle. And maybe you're in that situation yourself. Maybe you're thinking about somebody else as you're listening to this, thinking, okay, that's given me the drive to try and make that change or try and encourage that change in someone else. That's what we're going to talk about after 3 o'clock today. So give us a ring, 0500 909 693 85058. And if you just want to take part on social media, at BBC5 Live is where you can find us for that.